The special session of the City Council of the City of Pleasant, Texas will now come to order, June 11th, 2014, 6:03 p.m. Item 2 is a roll call. Ms. Israel. Here. Mr. Science.
Here.
Mr. Best.
Here.
Mr. Garza.
Here.
Ms. Pacifica.
Here.
Mr. Gagos.
Here.
All members are present. Item number 3 is presentation, discussion, and overview of the Crestline 2 IH-37 project. Mr. Pearson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council, and we really appreciate you all being here on this off regular council meeting night. This is a very special night. Tonight we get to consider further extension of our master plan, our future land use assumptions, and some other things. We will go through the presentations as you see on your agenda, which will involve myself with an overview. Mr. Cope with Klein Engineering will give an overview of segment 1 of the project, which is a production facility, and this is a potable water project. Mr. Medding will then take about 10 to 12 minutes to give you all a brief overview of segment 2 of the project and segment 3. At that time, we will ask our rate study consultant, Mrs. Marshall from Fort Worth, who's been on the road all day. Thank you for coming, Carolyn. To give you all an overview of the rate study and what the recommended rates should be as we move forward. We have been working very closely with Karen for several months now. I want to commend Helen and her staff, especially Raquel, providing the in-depth data for Carolyn. The final presentation and discussion will be by no stranger to any of us, Mr. Mark McCliney with Southwest Securities, to describe and present to you all how we can move forward with this project financially. We'll begin with a brief overview. This project entails 3 segments, as we mentioned. A production segment, which is on the Crestline property. As you all know, we drilled a well up there. The well is there. The segment 2 of the project will be to pick up a 12-inch transport line from Halpin, move it appropriately east and slightly north to the North Towns production facility. Segment 3 of the project will be from the North Towns facility out the 97 corridor towards 37. The purposes of the project, the reasons for the project. We have to have more necessary storage per TCEQ requirement. Now, because of the additional services in the last 3 years due to economic development and the number of irrigation services that have been installed, we are at our limit. TCEQ requires you to get to a certain % of your storage capacity based on the total number of services in your system, and you should begin planning and construct. We're at that time. Segment 2, from Halpin to Northtown. This is to fulfill a plan endorsed by this council some 12 to 13 years ago, designed by former city manager Bill Lamb, and continued with the process through former city manager Coronado. That plan was to put a 12-inch transport line around this city, essentially connecting all the production facilities. This is the last major segment of that. We do have one more short segment, but this is the last major segment of that line. Segment 3, out the 97 corridor. This is to address and further implement the future land use assumptions and the CIP portion in the Master Plan Pleasanton 2025 adopted by ordinance by this council, designed by and conceived by the citizens of this city, the Planning and Zoning Commission, somewhat input from staff, and brought to the council in the master plan. We see the 97 corridor as the next future rapid expansion in our city. Mr. Weezar is going to go over the timelines, the preliminary timelines with you all, and I'll be back to the podium.
Good evening, Council. I have the proposed project timelines for segments 1 through 3. Design segment number 1 would be the production facility, which is the elevated storage tank on Crestline. Be accepting the bids by October, putting out for bids for October 1st, and then awarding on November 1st. Construction should start on March the 1st of 2015, and on through March the 1st of 2016. For segment 2 and 3, which are the bores and all the crossings, will be going out for bids on October 1st and awarding those bids out on November the 1st. The construction to begin on January 15th of 2015. And then finally, the construction, the actual construction of the pipeline done by our city crews from March the 15th of 2015 to April the 1st of 2016.
Mr. Weezar did mention the bidding process and construction. We will have to bid the production facility out by outside contract, and we will have to bid out the borings under the roads, through the river, Galvan Creek, under the railroad, and so on, by outside contract. The rest of the pipeline project will be put in by in-house crews, much like the 12,000 feet of pipe they put in the last 2 years. We have well-seasoned, qualified, and skilled people, and they're sitting here this evening. Thanks for coming. You need to know what it costs right now. The production facility is around $2.6 million. Segment 2 from Halpin to Northtown, the 12-inch pipe, is about $1.6. Segment 3, the 16-inch pipe heading out the 97 corridor, is $2.1. Right now, we have $598,000 in the utility construction fund through savings in the drilling of the well up on Crestline in the past few months. We had about $1 million in the bank. That well ran about $400,000 or so to drill. So the combination of financing and the $598,000 we have in the bank at this point will complete the financing for the project. At this point, I'll turn the podium over to Mr. Crowe with Klein Engineering, and then we'll go from there with segments 2 and 3 with Mr. Meddy.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all tonight regarding this pretty significant project for the city of Pleasanton. Bruce asked me to talk about the production side of things, so that's why I'm here. If I'm assuming, if I could, I'll be talking about the Crestline Production and Storage Facility. And as Mr. Pearson stated, we recently drilled a well. It was completed in January of 2014. A really good well. We test pumped it at 1,500 gallons a minute. We did have the ability to increase the pumping capacity, but we didn't have a way to meter it. And I believe we hit the 2,000 gallon a minute mark pretty easy on that well. So we got a really good well. It is a gravel packed well. The total well depth is about 1,700 feet. We screened, I believe, about 275 feet of it. Water quality in that area is really great. It's consistent with what we'd expect in a Carrizo water well. The iron is a little bit high, marginally high, and actually this well compared to the other wells y'all have. So there will be some iron treatment required using the same methods as I believe you're using now, the sequestering agent. So not too much has to be done from a production standpoint to put that water in service. My next slide is just wanted to show you the cross section of the water well itself. This is kind of an as-built condition, just to show you where we screened, how deep we went. The photo on the left is the actual test pumping they set up when they did figure out what kind of volume we're going to get out of this well. On the production side, part of what we call the wellhead works will need to go in. Vertical turbine pump, as this diagram shows, slip the pump down in the well. And we have all the fittings and valves required, metering, blow-offs, air relief, typical things you'd see on a public water well wellhead. From there, the water will be tied in directly to the existing system out there on Crestline and tied into the elevated tank. As Mr. Pearson stated, we are at that point in time where we need to be planning, if not designing, the new elevated storage tank. Currently, there's 600,000 gallons available elevated storage per the TCEQ. With the amount of connections we have in Pleasanton, it's 100 gallons per connection. Comes out to about 530,000, which is about 88% capacity. The TCEQ rule is 85% where you need to start upgrading your system. So we're there now. I know the master plan, with the anticipated growth and the land use out in the area, there's no time like the present to start on it. TCQ does monitor these kind of limits. I can speak from experience with some other water systems that were not proactive, and they are now under the gun to increase their elevated storage capacity. So that brings me to the types of elevated storage that we've been considering. We've got what we call the concrete composite tank, or the legged tank, which is what you're used to seeing here. We're looking at the 1 million gallon capacity. When we go to bid, we will bid alternate sizes too, just to get the best value for our dollar for these tanks. And I've just kind of provided some samples of what the composite tanks, y'all have probably seen them around in the area. They'll be new out here in Pleasanton, but they have a nice aesthetic look. The maintenance on them is considerably less than a legged tank. There's less steel to have to paint. And in the pricing that I've been given from some manufacturers on the 1 million gallon tank, from a legged tank to that is less than $200,000, and that's basically if you tried to paint your tank, you're going to be spending that the first time you paint it, with all the legs and cables and all that stuff. So the volume, the size we're looking at, the 1 million gallon, that's kind of where you go away from the legged tank. It doesn't make too much sense to go with the legged tank in that size. Years ago, the composite tanks were a lot more expensive, but through competition and years, they've actually competitive now to where, we can bid them all at the same time, legged tank versus concrete composite, so we can get those hard numbers to make the best decision for the city. The 1 million gallon composite tank came back to my office at about $2 million. I believe they have the cost estimates for the production facility, or they've seen them. Mm-hmm. You saw the $2 million extension there. The legged tank, for example, the legged tank was almost 1.9 million. So I mean, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer what direction we'll head. But we'll still go ahead and advertise legged versus composite again to get the comparison and make the decision. John, that's yours, isn't it?
Your last two were passed.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Hopefully, y'all have kind of a typical site plan of the Crestline site. And this is just something I put together just to kind of make sure things are going to fit spatially. We know where the well is. We know where the water lines are out in Crestline. So just positioning the elevated storage tank in a position that allows access, one, to build it, two, to maintain it for in the future when the tank does need to be painted. We need to leave plenty of room from the surrounding property lines, so to help minimize any kind of dust or anything that may be generated. And then finally, as part of the production facility, sorry, I keep forgetting, the generator. A generator would be installed out there in the event the utility loses the power. Generator kicks on with an automatic transfer switch to restore power to keep the citizens up in water. We've had pretty good luck putting these in some of our water plants. I'm not sure if the water plants now have any generators. Sewer plants do, yeah. So this is good. It's pretty important to have that backup power, especially on a good well. We have out there that's potentially going to be serving all the way to 37, so that the need for it's pretty obvious. And with that, that's pretty much my presentation on the production side. I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Mayor,
Ms. Israel.
I just wanted to ask one quick question. I believe Mr. Pearson was talking about as far as the 1 million gallon well was concerned, I mean, the storage concerned, that we might have a recirculating pump within the well itself? I mean, the
Up
tower
in the
itself,
tower.
I'm sorry, yeah. Down the tower itself?
There's an optional mixing system you can put
Yeah.
in there up there, just so
To
water
keep it
doesn't go
circulating,
stagnant.
correct? Yeah. And do we have any type of price as to what that would be as far as an add-on? Would that be minimal? What?
It's minimal in the grand scheme of things. It really is. When we would bid it out, we wouldn't bid that out as a line item. It would
Okay.
just be in our specification to provide the mixing system.
Okay, and can you give just a real quick rundown on how that works? Does it take just suction from within and just turns the water over?
I believe they're mechanical. We hardly ever put them in, to be honest. My experience, but I'll be glad to get more information and send it y'all's way just so y'all can know. But
Without it, there's no issues with more sediment buildup towards the bottom of the tank?
there's always that
Well, yeah,
possibility.
yeah.
But this is a gravel packed well,
So,
and the results we've seen on our preliminary testing is pretty clean water.
okay,
So
I appreciate it. That was it.
we'll have to go to the extent of the sand traps and everything else.
I appreciate it.
So,
Thank
thank
you.
Other questions from the
I got a
court?
question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Garza.
Is there a color that is more durable,
As far as
the tank?
like a white or a blue,
Green.
Yeah, no, which one's more durable?
it depends on the manufacturer. There's different types of paint systems. The Tanemic paint is a real good quality paint right now that I think they'll put 20 or 30 years on it. The paints always degenerate over time, and that's just part of the maintenance. But
So blue really isn't a factor?
I don't, my personal opinion, no.
That's what we were told before, that it had to be blue. to
No, I think
last
last time the
longer.
reason it was blue is because it was cheap.
She said it lasts longer.
And that's, wait a minute, is
There,
it
there
cheap?
are different styles of paint systems. I mean, the more expensive ones are going to be the ones that are going to last. You know, and then obviously the cheaper ones are ones you might have to come back in 10 years and redo.
Mr. Garza, typically what we see in most of the pedestal tanks in this area is a light shade of green on most of the pedestal tanks. I've been watching one on 281 since 2000. They have not repainted that tank yet. So back to Brian's comment about, 15 to 20 years, they've not repainted that tank yet, and it still has a luster to it.
And the paint systems are getting better, because I mean, they're, you know, these are very
Thank you.
important and they're not easy to maintain.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cope.
All right, thank y'all.
We're on to 5, presentation segment 2, helping in Northtown, and number 3, Uvalde and IH 37. Mr. May.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Evening.
Good evening.
My part of this is to go over segments 2 and 3, and I'll give a brief overview. Segment 1 started as far as the pipeline segment right here by the well, and goes over to Halpin, which is right there. Segment 2 is the blue line from Halpin that goes over across the River Railroad and 281 to Northtown. And then this point on the picture drops down to this one, and then you're going out Highway 97. This is Galvan Creek right here. This is I-37 on the far end. So, segment 2.
John, I have a question.
Sure.
Mayor.
Go ahead, Mr. Giles.
The little line that's going under 37 to, I guess, the south part of the property, is that being bored under? So,
We're not going across 37. We're
I mean, I'm
going-
sorry, 97. They are bores?
They are bores.
Okay.
Yes. The little short segments, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Those right there.
So the line's going to be on the north end of 97, and then we'll bore underneath 97 to provide water to the south end of the.
Yes, to the eastbound side of 97.
Just to clear it up, all the road crossings that have anything to do with TxDOT are gonna be bored to include the creeks and the river. All of that will be bored.
And there's Parsons Road and also Corgi Road, and then 2 along the property. But anyway, so segment 2 begins at Halpin and ends at the Northtown plant. It's about 2 miles in length. The route runs along the west side of Yosemite and the north side of Yellowstone. And that second slide is looking down Yellowstone towards 476. And that takes you to Bore 1, which is a crossing of 476 right up there in that corner. And it gets you from the west side to the east side of TxDOT right away. The route then heads down 476 to Haverlaw Road and begins going across Haverlaw Road. That was, look at Bore 1, and this is looking down Haverlaw Road. And as you get on top of the hill, you get to just past Tessman Road, and there was going to be quite a bit of rock cut in that area, as some of us know from driving it frequently. There's a lot of rock outcrop in the area. So the work along Haverlaw Road from 476 to Main Street there will be off and on rock cut.
I have another question, Mayor.
Mr. Giles.
John, how far down on Testman is that going to come up? Is it going
It's
to
not
pass
going-
the little low water crossing, or?
It's not going down Tessman.
It'll be right
I mean, how far? I mean, I know it's going to be coming east, but how far down on Testman is it going to cross over? Is my question.
It's going down Haverlaw Road,
Okay.
but
I guess
Okay,
he's
so
at- how
it's
far
not
off
going to
Haverlaw
go
Road?
through like where Mr. Sotelo has an RV park and all of that was mentioned at one
It's
time?
not-
Or that
it's-
was a sewer?
It's going up on top of, yeah, you're thinking of the sewer.
Okay, okay, so this is gonna go along Havilah Road. Okay.
Yes, sir. It stays in Haverlaw Road.
All right.
Route, then we'll cross the north end of River Park to bore number 2. And bore number 2 will be a horizontal directional drill, which is a slightly different type of bore. It's kind of like the drilling rigs that you're used to seeing, where they can put a curve to the pipe, and instead of just a straight steel pipe going under. Bore 3 is at the Union Pacific Railroad. That one will be a conventional bore with a steel casing. With it going under the railroad, it'll have to be a little bit thicker casing to go under.
Now, Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Where is that gonna come out, once you go underneath the railroad heading east, where's that gonna be coming out?
It's in the general alignment of Uvalde. It'll kind of line up with Uvalde.
Okay.
But the other thing, there's a pipe in the river that it comes from the wastewater plant. There's a plastic PVC pipe towards the north end of the pecan orchard, and that's about where we're going to cross the river, and it'll go as straight as possible from that point.
And then the Country Club Road also is
Yes,
more underneath?
It'll have to cross the Country Club Road. We're not boring under the.
We'll open cut that because that's our road.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
Bore 4 is how we cross 281, and at that point we're in the street Uvalde. We'll be open cutting as we go along Uvalde, and that'll be a conventional bore with a steel casing under the TechStat right away. The remainder of the route runs along Uvalde to the Northtown Water Plant. And this segment costs 1.67 million. It'll require a TechStat permit to do. The route runs along Yosemite, Yellowstone, Dimsdale, Haverlaw, and Uvalde. The open cut will be by our city construction personnel. We mentioned the rock trenching along Haverlaw and the project across the barriers of the Atascosa River, Union Pacific Railroad, and US 281 by bores. Segment 3, moving on, picks up at the Northtown Water Plant or at 97, depending on what you're looking at. The 16-inch begins when you get to Highway 97, and the 12-inch continues the whole way to 97. The beginning of the project is right there, and as you look along Uvalde, that we will have some challenges with the narrow road, and we have staff that are able to work with those challenges. The route continues east along Uvalde to 6th Street, and then it heads east along 97. And it continues along 97 past the Longhorn Museum. And the next barrier that we have is Galvan Creek, which that one will be very similar to the crossing at the Atascosa River. It'll be a horizontal directional drill as opposed to a conventional bore. And the reason for that is because of potential groundwater. We want to try to get in and out of there as quick as possible. There will be 4 secondary road borings that we talked about a while ago at Parsons Road, Corgi Road, and 2 of the significant property owners. The purpose of those crossings are to get water service to the eastbound side of 97. And as you're going along Highway 97 towards Floresville, that's a view at Corgi Road, and that's the last picture that I took right before you get to 37. Is number 17. And then the project will require a tax stop permit. The cost for this segment will be $2.14 million. Open cut will be the construction method by our city construction personnel. It crosses Galvan Creek with bore 5 and then the 4 intermediate borings.
I have just one question for you. Those bores, I think I can kind of see it on there. Is that just going south under 97 to those roads, correct? Okay.
Yes.
That's all I needed. Any other questions for Mr. Meding? Thank you, Mr. Meding. Item number 6 is presentation, discussion, recommendation of the water wastewater rate study. Ms. Marshall.
Carolyn is approaching. I know we're throwing a lot at you. We're trying to hit the higher points so you can see what we're trying to do. And we'll wrap this up at the end before we reach the possible action items after Mr. McClellan. Carolyn?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being able to talk to you tonight. Before I start my presentation, I would really like to tell you what a joy it has been to work with the staff here. Very, very responsive. And in my mind, no, she's calling us again, you know. But they were very responsive to all the requests that I made, and it has been wonderful working with them.
Good to hear.
Okay. The first thing I want to do is give you kind of a rate-making 101, okay? Just to let you know how rates are established. Okay, the American Water Works Association actually is the premier authority on everything that belongs to water. They have many, many manuals that are out, and the rate-making manual is called the M1, and that's the one that all of us in the rate-making business look to for guidance on how to handle certain things. And so when I used that manual, I use it every time I do a rate study because every city is entirely different. And so even though there's similarities, everybody has little quirks and little things that are going on. And so I use that manual every time I do a rate study. Okay. What we're going to talk about is you budget on the cash basis. So what we want to do is look based on cash, what you're bringing in, what's going out, to determine whether your current rates are sufficient to cover your expenditures. And we just look at that and go, okay, now this is the rates from current, and how this is the revenue from current. Is it going to cover all your cost? Now you guys have a combined system. In other words, everything is combined into one fund. Some cities split their water and sewer out, but you don't. You keep it in one fund. So the first thing I have to do in order to develop both water and sewer rates is divvy up the costs. Now, some of the costs are extremely easy to divvy up because they're actually in the sewer department or they're in the water department of your fund. The ones that are hardest are the admin costs and your debt, unless there is something that's very specific that tells me how to divvy up the debt and how to make water responsible for only their portion of the debt and sewer responsible for their portion of the debt. What I did was actually, I looked at how you budget your revenues, your water revenues from rates and your sewer revenues from rates. And that happens to be 55% water and 45% sewer. So that's how I divvied up the cost and allocated the cost between water and sewer that needed to be allocated. Okay? What we wanted to do, again, is to determine what the revenue requirements are for each service and examine your current rate structures and recommend alternate rate structures that would meet the philosophy of your city. Okay?
She says, okay, go.
Here's a schematic of the total revenue requirements. Again, you look at total O&M for the entire system. What is the debt for the entire system, which is your principal interest, and many times you have legal requirements for debt coverage. To be able to, and that's always included. It's not budgeted, but it's always included. The other thing is the, okay, thanks. Okay, then we look at cash finance capital, and that also includes depreciation. Now, depreciation, again, is not a cash item, but it kind of gives you a sense of how your assets are being used and what the, like, if you have a 50-year pipe, where are you in the life of that pipe and how much of it do you start to need to watch, because it may start going bad on you pretty quickly. If you have 75-year-old pipe that's never given you a problem, then you still kind of watch it, you pay close attention to it, but as long as it's never given you a problem and you haven't been out there fixing it every month, then you're okay with it. But you may have 30-year pipe that is a problem, and it all depends on what the material and what the composition of that particular piece of pipe is. Okay? Then you have a whole bunch of other revenues. You have interest revenue. You have impact fees. You have all the other revenues that are associated. Now, those actually cover a portion of your budget. So what we're really interested in is only what we need from rates themselves. And so when you take out all your tap fees, your interest, your penalties, that kind of thing, you get your revenues needed from rates. And that's what we focus on. Okay. Since when I started the rate study, the fiscal year 15 budget was in very preliminary stages, okay? So I used the fiscal year 14 budget for the current year revenue requirements, okay? And I used both the revenues and expenditures for fiscal year 14. Now, I looked back at fiscal year 11, 12, and 13 for comparison purposes to see where you were and what you were doing during that time. One of the things that I noticed is that you rely heavily on your, when I say heavily, you rely on your working capital to balance your budget and to pay for a lot of your cash finance capital. Okay, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's a perfect use for excess working capital. Now, you notice I said excess because sometimes when you start getting in the habit of using that working capital, then you tend to continue to do it without looking at what it's actually doing to you financially. Now, you actually had 151 days in working capital as of 2011, and as of this current budget, you're down to just above 100 days. So you're really drawing it down fairly quickly. So that's one of the things that we probably need to look at and want to watch over a period of time. I have to tell you, when I saw, over the last 4 years, you have actually lost almost $400,000 in working capital. And when staff is faced with with that loss, then they have to really stay on top of their financials because they don't want to spend money they don't have, and they have to really do a lot of revenue projections to make sure that they are on top of things and that they're not going to put the city in a very bad financial position. And the staff has done a good job of taking care of that and watching it. So I'm very thankful that you have who you have, because they've been doing a good job of keeping you into as much trouble as you could get into. Okay.
Keeping us from getting into it, or keeping them to get into it?
It's
From
keeping
getting
us
into it?
from-
From getting, okay.
From getting into that. Okay. And again, I went through that one. Okay. In order to determine what the revenues are from current rates, we have to, and I made a lot of assumptions doing this, because again, I used quite a few months of actual consumption numbers, both in accounts and in the consumptions that were billed, okay? And so I looked at the average monthly consumption. Now, when you say average, you've got the summer months that are high and the winter months that are low, and so all of those numbers got averaged together to come up with an average monthly revenue coming in, okay? And then I used the current number of billed accounts that you have. You have about 4,500, almost 4,600 billed accounts that you bill every single month. And then I had to look at the volume that's included in your minimum bills, and on the water side, you include 2,000 gallons. So a person that uses 1,500 gallons every single month, all they pay is a minimum bill. If they use 3,000 gallons, they pay the minimum bill and they're charged for 1,000 gallons. So just to let you know, that is the way you've set your structures up for right now. On the sewer side, you bill from 0 to 10, and you have the ranges just like you do on the water, on water. Okay? And again, on the sewer rates, I had to determine what the average monthly volumes were, and then determine the current number of accounts for the minimum bill. Now, you do not have the same number of accounts for sewer that you do for water. A lot of your accounts on the water side are irrigation meters. Okay, so you bill water for there, but those irrigation meters are not billed for sewer. So you have many fewer meters and meter charges on the sewer side than you do on the water side. All right. Okay. This is your water revenue requirements. Based on the study, you have $1.7 million, almost $1.8 million in O&M costs. That's your personnel, your supplies, your maintenance, those types of things. You have $434,000 in debt, $451,000 in cash finance capital. By the way, I have to tell you, you guys are doing a great job of doing a lot of maintenance every single year. I don't know that I've seen these kinds of dollars very often in a city this size. Most of the time, if they do any cash finance capital at all, they do less than $100,000. Well, you know, in most cities, all their pipe is breaking, their rolling stock is falling apart, and so you can't do just a whole lot with $100,000. But you guys have done a really, really good job of maintaining your system to the tune of $400,000 on the water side. Okay. So we look at the total revenue requirements of 2.6 million, and your other revenues total 231 million. That's all the tap fees and the interest and all those various things. So right now we need $2.4 million from rates. Okay? Now, this scenario does not address the continued decline in your working capital. Not at this point in time, it doesn't. Okay, but I will tell you where it does. All right, and here are your sewer requirements. Again, it's exactly the same, but you get 1.8, almost $1.9 million that are needed from rates. All right, now let's look at your rate structures. Your minimum includes 2,000 gallons for water. The water minimum is based on meter size. So the bigger the meter, the more you charge for it. The sewer minimum is a flat rate. Again, it's just a flat rate. It doesn't matter what size water meter you have. It's just that you're charged right now $18 for your inside customers. Okay? There's a tiered water volume for all your customers. And that's another really good thing that you guys have going for you, that you have your tiered water rates. That doesn't happen very often in a city that's, well, in a city this size, yeah, but in the smaller cities, most of the time they'll charge $2 per thousand. It doesn't matter how many thousand gallons you use, it's just $2 per thousand. So, but you have a tiered water rate, and you have 6 tiers, and that's a very good thing. Tiered water rates tend to promote conservation. Now, a lot of people think conservation is a dirty word and that you're not supposed to use water. What conservation really means is prudent use of water. You use it wisely. Okay? Your sewer also has a tiered volume. And your sewer customers are billed, again, for 100% of their billed water. There's no gallons included in the minimum. Okay? At the current rate and structures, the water is projected to have a 16% deficit to be recovered over an entire fiscal year. Well, we are 8 months into this fiscal year, and so anything you do now based on 2014 information is not going to have a very big effect. So you're not going to recover as much, very much of the revenues that you need. And then on the sewer side, you've got, it's projected to have an 8% deficit to be recovered over an entire fiscal year. The other thing that I did was a financial plan, and I projected out for 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19. I projected the budget for those numbers. Okay? What I used is a 3% increase, a 3%, mostly it's a 3% COLA, you know, and so I looked at that and said, okay, now, if you're not going to recover as much revenues as you needed here, it's going to have to be moved into the next year. Okay, so that's what we're seeing here is that you're still, even if you adopted these rates tonight and they went into effect tomorrow, there is no way you're going to recover 16% or 8% of for the 2004 information. But what you will do is that it'll carry over into 2015. Okay? All right. One of the things that we need to look at is, do your current rate structures reflect the philosophy of your city? Okay? Every city has their own philosophy of what is right and wrong for their customers. And so we've looked at yours, and we also need to follow the federal and state guidelines on how rates are supposed to be set. Okay? Do you want conservation rates? Yes, you have conservation rates. Do you want senior rates? Many cities are very aware, especially cities that have a very large senior population. They don't want to to create a burden. You have to have affordable water. That just, you can't do anything other than that. So if you think that there's going to be a problem for some of your citizens, you might want to look at setting up a separate rate for that group and actually charge them something different than you would your regular customers. Okay? Again, do you want the inclining, declining, or fixed rate structure? The inclining block rate promotes conservation. Okay? The declining block structure, where the highest one is for the lowest volume, that is usually used a lot for industrial customers. People that use a lot of water in their product and you know that every single month, as long as they are active, that their usage is going to be very stable. Okay? And most of the time, it's very high usage. So if you wanted to set a declining block rate for that class of customer in order to, number one, it helps promote some kind of economic development if people come in and see this, or if businesses see this. But it would need to be an industrial customer and not just a commercial customer. Okay? And then, since you do some volume that's included in the minimum, I will tell you now that that is not a conservation promoter. When you give the appearance of free water, which it looks like you're giving away 2,000 gallons every single month for all of your customers. So that is not a promotion, and it doesn't lend itself to the conservation rates that you already have in place for your structures. Okay? The recommended minimum rate structures, okay? Right now, and you do charge based on meter size, okay? The American Water Works Association recommends equivalent meters. Now, an equivalent meter, they've done tons of studies all over the country and all over the world about what is the relationship between the smallest meter in your system and the largest meter in your system. What are the capacity differences between the two? And so they recommend that you establish a rate for your smallest meter in your system, and then multiply that number times the equivalent meter for a 1 inch. A 1 inch meter is actually 2.5 times the 3/4 by 5/8 meter, and so that just grows exponentially, or whatever you want to. It just grows, and I think the 6 inch meter is something like, what is it? Eight. It's more than that. It's sort of say 8 times, but I think it's more like 50 times or something like that. Because when I actually did the multiplication, a 6 inch meter would be over $1,000. That was what would be the minimum charge for that. So then your fixed rate for the sewer minimum, that's appropriate. Many people think there is a direct correlation between water coming in and wastewater going out. Well, that's not really true. So the fixed rate for your sewer minimum is appropriate, because the only thing that your meter has to do with it is the fact that it measures your water, and you are basing your sewer charges on the water that goes in. Okay? Okay. Again, your current volume rate, you have tiered block rates, and you might give the appearance of free water with your 2,000 gallons that's included in the minimum. Okay. To encourage conservation, again, AWWA recommends that each tier, when you have a tiered system, when you have a tiered rate structure, that each tier is between 25 and 30% greater than the tier below it. And that's exactly what I did with your rates. I kept the very lowest rate the same, as it had been all along. And then I just added, on the water side, I just added 30% to that to come up with the second tier. And that's how I got those, okay? And again, this really provides a clear message as to the intent of the structure. Now, let me also tell you, when you have water conservation rates, when they work, they work. So you may not see any change in your usage the first year you implement rates, okay? And you may have done the same thing when you implemented these tiered rates in the beginning. You may not have seen anything, but now you are. But however, the people that use there's a very small number of your customers use greater than 50,000 gallons. And most of those are your businesses, your car washes, and your hotels, and those kinds of things, those kinds of people, customers. So what you have is 70% of your customers use between 0 and 10,000 gallons every single month. Okay? So you just kind of understand. But now, that doesn't necessarily mean they use 70% of the water. They actually only use 25% of the water. So you have 70% of your customers that use 25% of your water and get billed for 25% of the total volume in a month. Okay? And again, now on the sewer side, I increased the rates by 25%. Okay? So the first tier is exactly the same as it was. We increased the minimum rate by $2. We increased it from 18 to 20. And then the first tier rate was exactly the same as it has been in the past. And then each tier above that was increased by 25%. Okay? There you go. Okay. And we already talked about that one. All right. You have any questions?
Mr. Mayor. I noticed on some of the numbers, the outside lines are significantly higher than the inside lines. Now, just so that I can clarify my own mind, are the outside lines considered the irrigation lines, or, okay?
Those are people that are outside your city limits.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah, because my concern was that just a few years ago, people put in lines separate from the sewer, and I just didn't want to all of a sudden see rate costs going up for one versus another.
No. These, when it says outside, those are people that are outside your city limits.
I got you.
And the reasoning behind that is that the reason their rates are higher is that your citizens, the people that live inside this city, are responsible for all of the operations, if you will. They're responsible for the debt. So they're on the hook for anything that happens or that goes wrong. The people that live outside the city, all they know is they're going to get their water, they're going to get their sewer treated, and they're not going to suffer any kind of consequences from anything that happens.
So those numbers are based off of the expected population on the outside, your projected revenues, the current, and it has no calculations on possible annexations of the future and how that will adjust and change?
Well, no, but it will. What will happen is when you start annexing those people, their rates are going to go down.
Right.
So you will lose some revenue, water and sewer revenue, when you annex the people. But I think your growth.
We did talk about the 88 properties
Yes.
this year.
Yes. Given the fact that you have so much stuff going on in the city, so much activity going on, I don't know that you would miss those revenues when you annex those people, because you've got so much growth going on and so many things. I took a drive around your city just a little while ago and saw some really interesting things going on. So I don't know that you're ever going to miss that. So you're good.
Is there a way to give us kind of a ballpark idea for somebody who pays $50 a month? What are they going to see their water rates go? Somebody pays $100 a month, what are they going to see their water rates go?
Wait a minute, I'll be right back. I have it in my briefcase in here, so.
Okay.
And I already know the answer.
What is it? What is it? 75? 75?
605.
While we're waiting,
675.
605
605
a month
a month.
That's not
on the base rate.
but we need,
And I'll be shocked if it's percent.
Okay, what I did was did 70% of your customers are in the range between 0 to 10,000 gallons. I did what happens if you're a 9,000 gallon customer? Okay?
Thank you.
Now, for anything above 10,000 gallons, it'll be a little more significant than what this is.
Thank
But
you.
again, you don't have that many people that are above 10,000 gallons, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, 605.
Okay, you can see there that you've got, it's 9,000 gallons, okay, and here's the minimum water, here's the volume for water and the total, all right? So you can see on the right-hand column that the difference between the minimum current rate and the minimum recommended rate is 55 cents a month. The difference between the volume of 12.25, now these are dollars, and 15.75 is actually the inclusion of the first 2,000 gallons that you now don't charge for and you include in your in your minimum rate. All right. So the total bill with the recommended rates would be, well, the total water bill would be $4.05 increase. The total sewer bill would be a $2 a month increase, which is a total of $6.05 for 70% of your customers that on a monthly basis, and that annualizes out to $72.60.
So somebody who's right now using 2,000 gallons, paying at our current rate, it's less than $2 a month difference. Is that about right?
Well, yeah, for the sewer side.
No, right now, if you have somebody who's using just the minimum 2,000 gallons, and they use 2,000 gallons based on the recommended rates, that's like $1.98 difference, right?
It's actually $3.50. It's a $3.50 difference.
because that's the volume that would come off. Because there'd be no volume charge.
Well, you'd get charged on the new recommended rate for 1,000 gallons, correct?
No,
Two.
no minimum rate usage.
That's where you're losing me. All right,
Okay.
I'm with you now.
Cost of what it takes us to get the water to the meter, including the box in the meter.
It's
1405.
service, okay? So now, if a person, say a person is out of town and they don't use any water at all, zero water, then they'll only get billed the 1405, okay? Right now, if they use less than 2,000 gallons, they will only get billed 1350. Okay, so that's the reason for the difference in the two volume rates. It's $3.50 for those first two gallons.
Okay.
I have a question there. So, okay, if this increase is 605 a month, and you go over, I guess my question is, what is the cost going to be for each additional 1,000 gallons beyond?
2,000?
Yeah, beyond.
The
your
same
2,000.
cost as it's been up to this point.
Yeah, it's a, yeah.
$1.75
same
a
cost.
thousand.
How much?
$1.75 a thousand, that's not
And that's
changing.
not going to change?
That's not changing, no, sir.
Anybody within that range, from the 0 to 10,000, that volume rate is not changing from what it was before. So,
So anything over the 2,000 is going to be charged $1.75 per 1,000 gallons as it's charged today?
Exactly. The rate for 0 to 10,000 is being recommended to stay at $1.75 a thousand. The only difference is everyone will pay from 0 up to that 2,000. It's not included in the minimum cost. The minimum cost is only what it takes to get the water to the meter, including the box in the meter.
Okay, so then my next question is, okay, this 1405 recommendation, or recommended rate, you won't tack on another $1.75 times 2.
Not unless they use the water.
Not unless they use the water, okay.
Yeah.
Somebody using 2,000 gallons, it's going to be $17.55.
Is that like,
Mr. Precipiter.
is that like what you're calling a service availability? Is the minimum, if they didn't use any water, they would pay,
It's basically what it costs for us to get it to
get
them.
it to a service
And
If they
availability?
use it or not is not.
Yeah. Again, it's called ready for service.
Okay, ready.
It's what it takes to get it to the meter itself and to have the meter box and the meter there. But it doesn't, if they don't use anything, if nothing goes through that meter, then they will be billed on the recommended rates, they'll be billed $14.05.
Gotcha.
Okay, and my next question, Mayor,
Mr. Gagos.
is going back to the sewer. It's a $2 increase and up to 2,000 gallons, or how is that,
Right now.
To me, that's the biggest problem and the biggest complaint is our sewer rates are too expensive. So if we're going to increase the rates, that means that sewer rate's going to also increase. Is that correct?
$2 a month.
Only $2 a month.
From 0 to 10, because right now, you guys are charged for every drop of sewer that goes through there. So if you get 1,000 gallons, you get charged for it, okay? Sewer is different than water for right now.
So after that, after 2,000 gallons, how much more is going to be charged for sewer?
It'll be
1,000 gallons.
From 0 to 10.
Okay.
It's going to be $1.90.
65.
$1.65,
It's
yeah.
the same rate as it is now. That's not changing either.
That's not changing.
Not changing.
It's above 10, Mr. Gagos.
It's above 10 that changes, it's above 20, 40
20,
that it changes.
40,
Every
70,
tier increases after that. But again, in that very first tier, the only thing that changes on the sewer side is $2 on the minimum rate to cover the cost of.
Okay, for the $1.65 would be over 10,000 gallons is for sewer or over 2,000?
If you use up to 10,000 gallons of water,
Then it
that's
will-
what it's going to cost.
Okay.
If you look, it's tiered between 0 and 10, 10 and 20, 21, 20,001 to 40, 40 to 70, 70 to 100, and 100 plus.
Okay.
And it goes from there. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Mr. McClanahan?
Item number 7 is presentation discussion on financing of the Crest Line to I-37 project. Mr. McCliney. I like to choose the logo. Looks good.
Thank you.
Council,
Evening.
city council or city finances remain very, very strong. When I look at the general fund and the utility fund, one of the things that Carolyn Marshall said is you're drawing down on the working capital on the utility side. That is true. I'd call that bleeding the system. You're not putting enough back in. So what she was talking about, fully agree and would recommend. The city's overall budget, finances have never been stronger. Even pulling that down, our general fund remains incredibly strong. The tax growth, incredibly strong. So your financial picture in a snapshot right now has never been better globally. Utility system, general fund, and everything. The city's bond rating, you may remember we were upgraded recently to the A+. That's as high as we've ever been. That's a third party looking at our finances that is independent. It's not me looking at it and saying, oh, we're an A+. It is someone that's outside that buys that service.
that sells that service to the actual investors that buy our bonds. So their input is very important, and the bond rating, as I said, has never been stronger. With what's going on, and you all live it every single day, cities in your area, in the Eagleford area, going down 37, going down 181, going down 16, going down 35, are all facing some of the same issues you are having. Growth is coming. We're preparing for it as best we can. Too often, we're behind that growth. The growth is there, and we're then catching up. So I think this program, from what I listen to, and I've been talking to Bruce about it from time to time, but it's a chance to get out in front of what's happening. You know, the elevated storage tank, from TCEQ's perspective, is behind. But going out towards I-37 is getting out in front of the curve, so to speak. So it's really kind of an exciting project for me to see and watch. Currently, your utility system, total debt is $6.3 million. If you look at this page, the second column from the left, existing debt service, you'll see it total $7,044,000. That's $6.3 million of principal and approximately $1 million of interest. The bond world would say you have very little debt proportionately, and you pay it off very quickly. Past city councils wanted to do that, have always kept debt 20 years or shorter, often 15 years or shorter. So would be considered on your utility system very low debt with the ability to issue more debt. This project, $5.8 million, would almost double what you have outstanding. But we're doing it with many more customers and the prospect of many more customers. And we're doing it when debt's declining. Look at the existing debt service. This fiscal year, you're at $785,000. That's principal and interest. Next year, it drops to $726,000, stays there roughly for 2 years. Then it drops to $435,000, a big drop. And then by 2027, it's gone. The last major issue that you did on the utility side was 2006. And that's going to that 2027. So this proposed issuance, 2014, we have principal of $5.8 million. We have interest almost $3 million. And that's at a 4.25% interest rate. And we'll touch on interest rates in a little bit. So you get a grand total of $8.7 million that you'd have to pay back on $5.8 million. Takes your far right-hand column there, your debt service. You're at $785,000 this year, and you'll eventually increase to $977 before decreasing again. So our view of it is you're at $785,000, and you need to get roughly $200,000 of additional revenue. We don't see that, again, as a bond issuing perspective, as problematic. That's a small number. We have issues that are coming in, and you'll see $500,000 and $600,000 of increases. So from our world, this is doable. Now, that doesn't take on your neighbors and increases in rates. That's just saying from a financial straight picture. Now, one of the things we've talked about very often over the last multiple years, particularly when we've done refunding, is that interest rates are low. The 10-year Treasury bond, municipal bonds follow Treasury bonds. The 10-year Treasury bond in January is 3.1%. Today it's at 2.6%. Everybody in December was saying rates this time and at the end of the year are going to be much higher than they were in January, much higher than they were at 3.1. And why? The Federal Reserve was buying government bonds at $85 billion a month in December. In January, they lowered it to $75 billion a month. February, 65, 55, 45, they're down to $35 billion that they're buying of government bonds. That was that quantitative easing you've all heard about. The Fed was buying those bonds to keep interest rates low to build the economy. Stuff in Texas we didn't need because of the Eagleford. Our economy's been going great. Outside of Texas, it is not going that well. So we're the beneficiaries, low interest rates. But with the Fed pulling back because the economy is doing better, everybody said rates are going up. And in fact, they're lower today than they were in January.
What's the 20?
Pardon?
What's the 20-year?
What's going on in Europe?
No.
20.
20 Europe. I think what's the tweener? What was the reason for it? It's about 1% higher than that.
Okay.
So 360. But the reason for all that is what's going on in Russia and Ukraine and slow growth in Europe, that people are saying, Europe last week, the ECB bank said we're going to negative interest rates. We're going to charge banks to hold money instead of letting them earn interest. So people that are invested there are taking their money out and putting it in the United States for safe security, driving down municipal bonds. So when we did refundings last year, I said, get it done because rates are going up. Well, I was dead wrong. Right now is and remains a very attractive time to borrow. Rates are going to go up. You've seen it, mortgages, everybody's saying rates are going to go up. So if you decide this project is something that you want to do, this is an opportune time to lock in on 20-year bonds at a fixed rate. So you would not, if interest rates go up, once you issue them, you would not see your payments change. It's not a variable rate. So we would lock in. We're using 4.25 because we're stretching it out 20 years. In today's world, we'd be closer to 3.5 to 3.75. So I'm trying to be conservative on the numbers that I'm showing here.
Well, that was the reason for my question. So you gave us the 10-year, but we're looking at 20 years here. So what is the 20-year?
Well, I was giving you a 10-year Treasury bond, which is a taxable bond. That was $260. Roughly a 20-year would be roughly $360. But that's not municipal rates.
Sure.
And that's where I'd say if we borrowed today, we'd be in the 350 to 375 range. Okay. So I'm trying to show you on a high side, worst case scenario, because as much as rates have come down, I could see them going up quickly. So I want to show worst case scenario.
Is this taking the existing debt that we have, bundling it into this and doing a...
It's no, because those bonds are not callable yet. It is leaving that bonds outstanding and issuing a new set of bonds by themselves. But it would be paid by the utility system. The utility system would consider it their debt, and it would be on par with the existing.
You know why I asked the question?
To refund it, to lower it?
No, I asked the question if that is if they're callable yet. If we could
save money on the outstanding.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we look at, on a regular basis.
Okay. That's just not possible with this current deal. All right. It was worth a shot.
Mayor?
Ms. Israel.
I'd like to ask a question as well. And it's kind of a future question, but it's still dealing with the utilities. What type of position will we be in like 5 years to possibly do another bond when we do this one? We have a wastewater treatment plant that we'll be looking at it expanding. So I'm just, and this doesn't take me away from it, I'm just interested because of the discussion that we're in right now, how that would affect us. Of course, we can't know the interest rate, but as far as the ability for us to be able to do this.
5 years from now.
Yeah, say,
We have a
$5
$5 million
5 years.
wastewater treatment expansion plan.
Yes,
We might be here the same thing with a new rate study
right.
to
Of
say,
course.
how are we going to afford this? But having, at that time, it would be roughly $8 million outstanding.
Okay, that takes care of me.
You would have no issue in the bond market if your finances remain strong, your
Correct.
general fund remains strong, your utility continues making your past payments, these new payments and keeps putting money aside for working capital, for that $451,000 that you're doing year in and year out. If all of a sudden, 3 years from now, a future city council says, we're not raising rates, we are not going to maintain what we've got, we would have trouble borrowing money again.
Yes.
Not again, we've never had issues there, because you've always been forward-thinking and not putting yourself in that
I
bind.
was just looking at the structure.
But based on the structure, we may have to look for new revenues, but you will have a drop-off in 2028 again.
Right.
Now, that's a long way out
That's
there.
that's what I was looking at the structure for, and the fact that we're actually not combined, we're in two different. So I guess when we look at it, we would be looking at the pay down off of one of them in order to offset the new possible bond.
But it wouldn't take into account, and pick it, going out 97, a subdivision comes in.
Correct. No.
And the new customers.
Right.
More industry out on 97 or in the industrial park. It doesn't take into account any new revenues. If all of a sudden, 3 years from now, because of new customers coming on, you are making
Right.
$500,000 after your $451,000 working capital, you could issue bonds without any new rate increases.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's how many new customers are coming on and what type of customers are they? You get one big industrial, it's just straight revenue that doesn't need much treated water. So all of a sudden, but if all of a sudden you pick up 2,000 residents, you're going to have to be doing a wastewater treatment plant sooner, but you have the impact fees from all those sewer customers.
Okay.
So, I mean, but your picture, your debt picture, even with this bond issue, would still be considered extremely low. I work with the city of Marble Falls. They're growing fast, but they have marble that they have to cut to it. Their debt is very high because the cost of their project just to get a water or sewer line takes trenching of marble to open up the ground to put a line in. So you don't have those issues and would be the market. When you get a new rating report, one of the things that it will say specifically is that you have the ability to go borrow because of your past history, and it's liquidity is not something that they would fear.
Thank you.
Long answer to a short question.
No, but I appreciate it. You covered exactly what I wanted to hear. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Potty? Thank you, sir. Item number 8, discussion action direct city staff to begin and complete design and construction of the Crest Line to IH 37 project.
Mayor?
Mr. Geigels.
I have several comments before we take action.
Okay, please.
Do a little overview.
I visited with Mr. Pearson today and drove out the site and all that, and I have concerns. I asked him about us providing the service outside of our city limits without them being annexed, first of all. And therefore, our taxpayers, our citizens who are receiving services will have to cover this expense. I'm concerned, and do not misunderstand me, that I understand the importance of this project and for the future growth of our community, but I'm concerned that if we do provide this service outside our city limits, if they will have options to either tie in or drill their own water well as they're doing now, and them not having to use or tie in. So that's one of my concerns. Second concern is anytime we have an increase, I know that we have not had an increase in services in several years, but anytime we have an increase concerns me for our senior citizens, people that are on fixed income, and citizens that are on low income. That concerns me greatly. So I just feel that justifying this project to provide a service, I know a lot of it's going to be in town, and we need it, but what concerns me is the extension out past our city limits at this time also.
Ms. Israel,
Yes, I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I'd like to motion to direct the city staff to begin and complete the design and construction of the Crest Line to I-37 project.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to direct the city staff to begin the completion and design of construction of the Crest Line to I-37 project. Any discussion? Being none, we'll proceed to the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 9 is discussion action to finalize the water wastewater rate study.
I have a question, Mayor.
Mr. Gagos.
What, other than what Mrs. Marshall, Mrs. Marshall presented, what other studies, and is there going to be a change in the amount that was discussed tonight?
No, sir. If you give us the direction, which is our recommendation this evening, to direct the city staff to issue, let me back up. Direct city staff to finalize the water wastewater rate study as recommended by the consultant, hold a public hearing on July 17th, bring an ordinance for first reading on July 17th, and a second reading and possible adoption on August 7th. We will finalize this study as presented tonight. Let me make one comment here. There's been a lot of discussion about the transient populations, apartment complexes, and hotels. Their rates will be the same as everyone else's rates. So they'll pay a basic meter charge, and then there's no minimum charge per room anymore. We're charging a minimum $13.50 per room for those transient populations. We had to do that to get in line with what was already being charged to the RV parks, and we won't be redundant there. But they'll pay a basic meter charge based on the size of the meter, and then they'll pay for every drop of water they use. There will not be a $13.50 attached to every room like it is now.
Okay.
We will finalize the study as recommended tonight. There will be no changes to it, and we will bring it for possible adoption by the council.
Mayor,
Ms. Israel,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I'd like to make a motion to direct the city staff to finalize the water wastewater rate study as recommended by the consultant. Hold a public hearing on July 17th. Bring an ordinance for first reading on July the 17th and a second reading and possible adoption on August 7th, 2014.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to direct the city staff to finalize the water wastewater rate study as recommended by consultant. Hold a public hearing on July 17th. Bring an ordinance for the first reading on July 17th and a second reading and possible adoption on August 7th, 2014. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Best.
I just want to say that I think it's a wonderful thing, though, that's what's happening with the hotels, bringing that in line. There was a lot of discussion about it being unfair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's really good.
Thank you, sir.
Other comments? None will proceed to the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 10 is discussion action concerning the financing of Crest Line and IH-37 project.
Mayor, your options are in front of you. The recommendation from staff is direct the city staff. Twice, direct the city staff, city staff.
You're driving that point home.
Well, I guess that's what happens at 5:30 in the morning, right? Whoa. Direct the city staff to issue the bonds of obligation for $5.8 million utilizing Mark McCliney and his firm Southwest Securities to finance the Crest Line to IH-37 project with the remaining funds in the utility construction account.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Best.
I move that we direct the city staff to issue the bonds of obligation for $5.8 million utilizing Mark McCliney and his firm Southwest Securities to finance the Crest Line to IH-37 project with the remaining funds in the utility construction account.
A second.
It's moved and seconded to direct the city staff to issue bonds and obligations of $5.8 million utilizing Mark McCliney and his firm Southwest Securities to finance the Crest Line to I-37 project with the remaining funds of the utility construction account. Any discussion?
Who seconded that motion?
Second on.
I heard yes, Ms. Pacifica.
Okay.
No discussion. We'll proceed to the vote. As in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 11.
For a second before the adjournment. One thing I found shortly after arriving here is with this council, councils before you all, and many of you were on those councils, and city managers before me, the most important thing to sustain life was water. We hear those veiled comments at times from others, but this council and previous city managers, they walk the talk. You all's decisions tonight continues that process. I will say that the folks who tie onto this line and any other line in the city, if the impact fees under consideration are passed by the council, they will pay their portions of this debt service. That's what impact fees are about. This has been an ongoing process for the staff for almost 4 months. I could not be prouder to work with the people that have presented to you tonight. Carolyn, I hope our relationship lasts a long time. These are true professionals and trusted individuals. We thank you for your trust and your faith in us, and we will work continuously every day to keep that. And our citizens, and God bless Mr. Lamb, his dream and his plan is going to come to fruition. Let me say one last thing. The reason we wanted the 1 million-gallon tank, and it's so much bigger than any other tanks in the system, it is the highest point in the city. This production facility, in times of need, will be able to do, in what they call in utility terms, float any pressure plane in the city or supply water to any place in the city. Okay. The other thing about the 1 million-gallon tank, we will have to reach 12,300 plus services before there's any more planning for another overhead storage tank. Right now, we're at 5,300. We'll have to double it and another half. That's the reason for the 1 million-gallon tank. I thank you all for your time. I thank everyone who came out on this odd night. And I really thank our new council members, because this is a lot to absorb. But most importantly, our citizens will thank you. Because when we have a pump go down and isn't running, another pump is. And the redundancy in our system, like many of you may not know, we had 5 of our 9 wells out all at the same time 2.5 years ago, and no one knew it, except the staff and your city manager, who was shaking his head wondering if I was bad luck because it took place a month after I arrived. That right there is a sign of the planning and the necessity that councils, and many of you were on those, saw the need in. Our citizens will have water and wastewater service, and you have continued that trend tonight, and I can't tell you how proud I am to work for you all and with you all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Ms. Israel.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
It's moved and seconded we adjourn. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned at 7:35 PM.